What's up? I have some exciting news. The waitlist for our concierge one-on-one telehealth patient care is now open at the time of recording. We are taking on specific types of cases right now. So if you head on over to drwillcole.com, go to the Become a Patient page, the consultation page, to see the type of cases that we're really focusing on right now. Our heart, our passion is to figure out what are the root causes of why people are not moving past their plateau. Most of our telehealth patients are very erudite people when it comes to health and wellness. They know a lot, but they're not where they want to be. And they're looking to take their health to the next level. So to get all the information, head on over to drwillcole.com and go to the Become a Patient page. Welcome to the art of being well. We also have lots of free resources in addition to the telehealth information. So if you want to nerd out on all things nutrition and functional medicine, go to drwillcole.com. And we're here on another Ask Me Anything. The episodes you all know and love, where we answer your burning health questions. Mm-hmm. All you have to do to get your questions submitted is email hello@drwillcole.com, and we add them to a Google Doc, and we get to as many of them as we can in these Ask Me Anything episodes. So go back and listen to previous ones if you love this format, which a lot of you do. And to help me out every Ask Me Anything episode, we have two brilliant members of our telehealth patient team. Andrea, they're both functional diagnostic nutrition practitioners who work with me with our telehealth patients. You're going to get an insider's look of a functional medicine perspective on a wide array of different topics. We have Andrea and Emily. What's up?
Hey.
Hello. And you get to meet with both of us if you come to care.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you talked to somebody yesterday, right?
Yes,
and they listen. Most of our telehealth patients listen to the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
They say it regularly.
They get to know us before.
They'll say that. They'll say, "I know your voice," and then I kind of die a little inside. But yeah,
that's the last thing you want to hear.
No, for a true introvert, but I appreciate it. It's sweet. It's exciting. I love that they're excited. It makes my heart happy.
Andrea is one of those people that's like, I don't like the attention, but she really
No,
does.
I actually don't. No, okay. We're not starting this episode off like this. We're moving on.
Like, middle of me.
I'll admit it. Okay. I love it. I love being on the show.
I don't.
We all love to be loved and seen.
Yeah.
It's no shame in that.
And we love our patients. I love that they already feel like they know us when we talk with them.
Absolutely. So let's get it. The first set of questions are really centered around health and wellness trends that people see on social media. So we kind of lovingly label these questions as hot or not. Yeah. What's our hot take on different things you all are seeing on social media? And then we'll get into other audience questions too. So let's jump into hot or not.
All right, I'll go first.
Okay.
This one's been around for a little bit, but I know that it was a huge trend. It said, what's your take on rice water hair trend, on the rice water hair trend? It started with just spraying soaked rice water in your hair, but now I see products like shampoo bars and more. Does it really help?
Yeah. So I never heard of that. I didn't know it was a trend. Obviously, I've heard of rice water. But so what are some of the things that are within it? In rice water, first of all, it's about 70 to 80% starch. And that sounds like it could change the texture, right? Maybe. Is that why people love it? Well, let's look into it. So what's in rice water? There are some amino acids, B vitamins, vitamin E, minerals, antioxidants. It's been used in Japan for thousands of years. Women used it from 794 to 1185 CE in Japan when they had long hair. So some of the benefits that advocates on social media are talking about is it detangles the hair, makes the hair smoother, increases shine, makes the hair stronger, helps the hair grow long. Here's what the research says for everybody. At first glance, the 2010 paper suggests that there's maybe some benefits. The authors notes that rice water may reduce surface friction and increase hair elasticity, which has its benefits, right? People want that. However, the study relies on historical examples to draw unsupported conclusions. It's not a great, well-formulated study, but was looking at the anecdotal information that was out there. Another research facility in Japan looked at imaging techniques that visualizes the strengthening effect on hair, specifically with inositol, which is a compound that we use quite a bit clinically in different formulas internally, not on people's hair. And inositol is in rice water. So maybe some of these vitamin compounds that are in rice water can be beneficial. And they saw some benefit as well. What I found was interesting was the difference between regular white rice water and fermented rice water, because fermented rice water has some higher nutrient density of some of these compounds. So I think it's completely fine if people want to do it, test it out, see if you adding these extra vitamins and minerals to your hair could have an outside in benefit. My take on it is hair health's more going to be an inside out job. It's, of course, we want to have non-toxic, clean things on our hair. That's part of the puzzle, but it's not the entire puzzle. And actually, for most people, I would say 2/3, if not more, of that puzzle for hair health is an inside out issue. But if you're looking for shine and extra elasticity support, maybe there's something there. What do you all think?
I just, and maybe you'll agree with me or not, Andrea, but I feel like it would smell bad. Like, I feel like my hair would not smell good.
So I
know this vein, but
I actually use a shampoo bar that has rice water in it. That's actually what I use.
Right.
So
if I did the homemade one, I guess is what I'm talking about.
The homemade one, yeah,
like,
but I will tell you, it does get a fermented smell if you keep it for too long. So like it has like its own fermented sort of smell if you don't get because I use it based off the EWG standard of cleanness.
Okay.
And the one that I use is a 1 or a 2, but then it, depending on if you use certain scents, even though they're essential oils, it kind of bumps it up. So the unscented ones can get a fermented smell. The scented ones, I've never noticed that with that before.
See, I just think that alone, and I know that's vain, but that alone is a not for me. I believe that I like the nutrients that you're talking about, and I think that there's probably a lot of shampoos that have that component to it, but I don't know that I would be willing to do the homemade rice water.
Yeah, so here's a homemade method if y'all want to try this really interesting experiment. You take about half a cup of uncooked rice, you rinse it thoroughly. Basically, you're making rice, guys. Place rice in a bowl with 2 to 3 cups of water, leave it to soak for 30 minutes, and then you're just straining the rice water into a clean bowl. That's the DIY, I think, social media, the way people are doing it.
And that's what they show on like the videos, like pouring it over their hair, putting in a spritzer bottle. I actually just like the idea of not having as much waste, which is actually why I moved to a shampoo bar in the first place. Is just it's a one less plastic thing that I have.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it sits in a bamboo shell. Like that's like how I have it.
My kids use the shampoo bars too, and we really like those.
Yeah. So obviously it has some soothing, calming,
I read it for the scalp
benefits.
too, that they've seen that be more soothing for people with dry scalp.
So what I like is, again, decrease waste, people finding innovative ways to bring more non-toxic things in their life. So overall, decent thing. Try it out. And I love when you take ancient practices that have been used for thousands of years that maybe don't have all the most robust randomized controlled trials, RCTs.
Yeah, but who's even going to pay for that?
Well, right. But that's my point. Is like you don't have to have science when you have antiquity and sort of ancient cultures teaching us some really interesting things that could be supportive. And it's way better than a lot of the other toxic things that people are using on their hair that are not beneficial at all.
Right.
That probably have similar benefits.
Yeah.
Right. And it's probably, how much money is, a thing of a couple of cups of rice? Very inexpensive.
Yeah, but I would definitely buy organic though.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that.
You don't want to buy stuff that has it's been sprayed with a bunch of pesticides, and then you're going to run that water over your hair.
You're going to cancel all the benefits.
Don't do that. You don't want some herbicides and pesticides on your head.
So organic is best.
Yeah, I also think just with that in mind too, just having a shower filter in general is going to help your hair too. So I know that's not part of the trend, but
that's a good point to talk about for people that don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just think understanding, glyphosate, but even other heavy metals, chemicals that are going to be coming through the water. We think about our drinking water, but we don't think about the water that we're showering and bathing in. And a lot of these chemicals can get through the skin as well.
Yes.
And so I always talk with people when I'm going over tox screens or glyphosate screens.
These are tests that we run for telehealth patients.
Yeah. So when we're talking about it, those are like preventative measures that we can take. And so, rice water, if you want to try it. But I also think a good first step to get good, healthy, strong hair would be getting a proper shower filter.
And that's a great segue, because isn't that the next question?
Yes.
Oh,
well,
wow.
kind
We
of.
didn't plan that.
Wow.
Well, it's not shower filter, but we're talking about water.
Yeah.
Purity.
So the next question, they said they're a huge fan of The Art of Being Well. On the next Hot or Not, I'd love to hear your honest opinions, something becoming more prevalent on TikTok. I don't have a TikTok, so I did have to look this up.
I don't have a TikTok.
Yeah. Me, Ma.
Yeah, there we go. It's living water.
Us elder millennials.
Elder
We say
millennial.
things like, I don't have a TikTok.
Yeah, it's true. I get all my TikToks on Instagram like a normal old person.
I do have a TikTok. At Dr. Will Cole, you can follow us. Right.
Anyways, the prevalent on TikTok, living water machines. I've heard you mention the AquaTrue and recommend that machine, but it seems living water is more intense and is purified to different pH levels. Curious about your thoughts.
Yeah. There's a wide scale, I would say, of price and ability of different water filtration systems. So they're not all created equally. And the living water, I didn't know about that brand specifically, but I did research in preparation for today's episode, because we get asked these, like, what do you think of that brand and that brand and that brand? And you kind of have to look at the specs on it. It seems like it does a decent job at filtration, and it does some added stuff as well, like shifting the pH, shifting the alkalinity of the water. So if those are things that are important to you, maybe it changes the taste more than anything. Is like if the taste of the water is important to you, you have some ability to shift the hardness of the water or the softness of the water, and that's a water customization based on purpose. I see some of the highlights with this living water. I don't have any personal experience with it. People ask me about Kangen water, like these more, and I would put living water under that category of, let's say, a higher end reverse osmosis plus, like these other ionization benefits that can impact taste. And some notice like an improvement of maybe their energy levels with more like the extra hydrogen maybe in the water.
Right.
So certainly I think they have their place. So I'm not against that. But my top goal with water purifiers, though, is to remove the environmental toxins.
Yes.
So you don't necessarily have to have the Cadillac. That's even Cadillac at the highest end, but you don't need to have, you know what I mean? My sort of, again, elder millennial reference. You don't need the Cadillac of water filtration to get the job done. You could go above and beyond, and I think there's a place for that. But yeah, that would be my take on it. What do you guys think?
I appreciate that someone out there likes it, and I appreciate that they would
that
pay.
Was shade.
Wow.
No, I'm being serious. I appreciate that.
That's like saying, I'm sorry you're feeling this
way. I'm sorry you
way.
feel that way. I'm sorry you feel that way about that water filter.
I'm being serious. I appreciate that. Who am I to knock someone else's happy? Like if that makes you happy and that makes you feel good, have it. But
I would never.
But ingesting alkaline water does not actually help your blood pH levels. It doesn't. So it's like all of this stuff about alkaline versus non-alkaline. To me, it's just. From a health perspective, if you're going to invest in something, I'd rather you get a filter that's going to filter out fluoride and pesticides and herbicides and all the different things that we know actually impact your thyroid health, your hormone health. Like our public water system has tons of medications that are floating in it, like anything from statins to birth control. The last thing I'm truly honestly worried about is the pH of my water. I just want something that's...
Yeah, it's not. I think that's a good way of putting it. It's a factor. It's not the most important factor.
No,
That's
and that's
how
what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's how I feel. And I feel like a lot of the machines that these people are talking about are really expensive just to care. I know it's more than just that, but to care about that for that price, I don't know that I'd pay that.
I wouldn't.
Yeah. So what is the price range for?
I mean, I think they run anywhere from like at least a few $100s to like the ones that are well known are almost $3,000. So to me,
but whole home reverse osmosis units can run in thousands as well, right? I mean, so it depends on if you want a single unit or a whole home unit.
Right.
You're gonna pay more for whole home units.
Yes.
No matter what brand it is. But the more bells and whistles you have on it, you're gonna pay a premium.
Yeah.
So look, I think there's a place for the quality of water, the essence of water. I think more and more water research is coming out. Even if you look at these sort of out-of-the-box things like the Masaru Emoto and the impact of resonance and frequency on water. I think there is something to be said of the inexplicable. May not have all the best studies, again, like we're talking about, but there's a metaphysical, if you will, aspect of water that impacts the physical that we just don't know a lot about it. Yeah, but I would start. I think Andrea has a good measured approach. Like, focus on the things we do know are issues. Like, what are the biggest problems, which are water contaminants, and then the other issues I would put below that, but may have some benefit, like the ionization, pH of water, but it's not as primary.
Yeah, I just think when we are talking about the average person who's listening and what they're going to invest in, and they're coming to us for advice on like what's going to be the greatest impact for me and my family's health long term, it's just not the first thing I do. But there's a lot of biohacking things that people do, and they love to layer in. So again, I'm not going to knock someone else's happy. Like for me, it would be a not. Only mainly because I don't know if that would be the investment.
Yeah, we called this hot or not. Did we give hot or not for rice water?
Emily did.
I said not because of the smell.
I didn't even give a take.
But
on
I would do a shampoo bar. I would try. If I were to do it, it would be purchased. It wouldn't be homemade.
Same with me. I would definitely not make my own rice water, but I would give it a hot with rice water in a clean, clean beauty
shampoo
product.
bar. Yes, exactly.
Sorry for those that were hanging on the edge of your seat,
wondering if we thought it was a hot or not.
Dr. Wokol was a hot or not with rice water. Settle the score. And I would give it a hot for these water filters if it's in your budget and you want to go above and beyond.
Right.
Yeah. To me, again, it would be personally a not, because for me, it's not an investment I would make. But if it's something you want to invest in,
there's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. I'd give it a hot, but I don't think you need it. It's not like a necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a hot for the hot couture.
A hot for the hot couture.
All right. There you go.
All right. So the last hot or not are grounding sheets. So what are your thoughts on grounding sheets, Dr. Cole?
So there's many products out there that are, none of these are created equally, right? So I wouldn't go and get electrocuted and you like putting some electrical mat on your bed. You want to definitely go for something that's reputable, that has like good cred behind it. Either people in the industry or studies, independent review, that you're getting something legitimate. Because I get sent links from telehealth patients and even family members on this one where I'm like, this doesn't look legitimate at all.
Yeah, like I can't even pronounce the company name.
Yeah, it's just, and it may be, but I don't have experience on every little startup out there that's putting together grounding mats and anything, any other example of something like this. But when you have something trending like this, you have a lot of people coming out with their version of it. So I love the technology. I look really at PEMF more than anything else, which I think there's some similarities between PEMF, and I would say I have more clinical experience more clinical experience with telehealth patients with PEMF, which is pulsed electromagnetic field frequency. And it's mimicking a lot of these technologies is just using electrical pulses and currents to impact positive EMFs, like just mimicking the EMFs of nature is really what it is. So you can notice more parasympathetic support, that resting, digesting, maybe slightly lowered inflammation levels, improved mood, better sleep. These are some of the purported benefits. And I would say, well, why? Well, it's mimicking nature. You see a lot of similar benefits of people doing grounding, just sitting in nature, or getting the research around Shinrin-yoku or forest bathing out of Japan and South Korea, of using nature as meditation and a medicine. So there's a lot of overlap between these mechanisms because it's just using technology and frequencies in devices to mimic what nature already has. So I see its benefit of like, okay, bringing the outside inside, right? Kind of mimicking nature's resonance and frequencies inside when maybe you don't have access to green space, or you are working inside all day, or you want to bring it into your bed or part of your meditation practice in your home basement gym or something like that. So I see benefits to reputable ones. And, you know, Bond Charge has some great devices. Higher Dose has some great devices that we are familiar with on a clinical level.
Yes. From an inflammatory standpoint, it's something that we've seen regularly with patients that really do notice discernible differences when they use regularly.
Yeah, I would agree. It'd be hot for me too. I think, you know, just in a therapeutic way, when we're dealing with inflammation, autoimmunity, like we found it to be helpful.
Yeah.
So,
and I think some of these PEMF, and just to be clear, like grounding mats aren't all PEMF, but PEMF has grounding, benefits to it, right? And it has that pulsed EMF that's mimicking nature, the non-polarized EMF that nature emits, right? Versus the polarized EMFs are the man-made ones, the sort of dirty EMFs, if you will, that can impact our cells, impact mitochondrial health, and stress us out. So you're kind of trying to tilt that score towards being exposed to more of these non-polarized EMFs, which grounding mats, PEMF, are two devices, technologies to do. But what I was going to say is that some of the devices that we have experienced clinically, they marry infrared as well.
Yes.
So infrared has its whole other set of benefits. So I like the tech stacking aspects of some of these devices that you're going to pay more for. And I think when I recommend to telehealth patients, we're recommending this or this or this, like a Higher Dose or Bond Charge is going to be more money than these sort of cheaper grounding mats on the market.
Yes.
But in many ways, in this circumstance, just like with the water, if that's important to you, you're going to pay more for some of these more bells and whistles. And there's more technology on some of these higher end ones.
Yeah. And I'm actually currently looking at two in our space right now.
Yeah.
So this is not just something that we talk about.
We have them at the clinic here.
we fight over them sometimes.
Yes,
We're like, I wanted to sit there.
Especially in the winter when we can't maybe go outside and get on our walks as much. You'll find us, sitting on these giant mats together, huddled on them, because it really, it is something that we clinically have seen that has been helpful. And I agree that this is one of those things where the investment equals the science, equals the benefits, and then to me it's worth it.
To be clear, these are not like the high voltage PEMFs.
They're not like the ones you're going to get in a med spa. These are like the at-home version of it.
The ones that you've done.
I've done
We've
them.
all done them, but you've done more. What's the company that makes them?
I don't know the company because I never really looked at it, but we did just see this at the biohacking conference and I used it there.
So basically this is like a sleeping
we
bag.
We talked about this on a mental health is physical health.
If we could put this in the show notes, the biohacking conference one, we did go through each one.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned that one.
Yeah.
So
there are ones that will jolt you around.
Yeah.
If you like being thrown around a little bit.
Those are kind of cool though.
I noticed the most discernible difference for 48 hours after.
That's hot.
Oh boy. Anyways, back to the clinical aspect. I do notice for that one, the most relief, the higher voltage ones for longer periods of time. Like I don't need to use it every day. Like I will notice for 48 hours up to a week, a discernible difference.
That's the higher voltage.
That's the
ones.
higher voltage.
Yeah,
ones.
these are the ones I'm talking about, like a day-to-day use are like really like lower frequency PEMF that you don't really feel anything while you're on it other than the relaxation benefits.
Right.
Yeah. And a lot of them have the heating component. So
with the
it's
infrared
like laying
benefits.
on a giant heating pad.
And there's crystals in it that kind of conduct that heat and light and resonance as well.
Yeah.
All right. Next
I would say
question.
it's a hot.
Yeah, that's a hot for me.
Yeah.
too.
All right. Well, now we're going to move out of the hot or not and just into the clinical questions. And so this is a question, I think from a patient standpoint, we get asked, if not daily, at least weekly. And it says, is it possible to heal gluten sensitivity or be able to eat gluten again after healing the gut? Or could it be only very little or only certain kinds of wheat? So they're getting very like granular here. They're like, what and how much gluten can I have?
Yeah.
I have many opinions, but
I was just going to say, I can't wait to hear all of our answers.
yeah.
So the answer is it depends, right? As with most things. So the context and nuance of that person's bio-individuality and health history matters. But I would say it's something that's on the table for most people once we've done our job in improving immune system resilience. So it's a matter of what type of wheat are we bringing back in, how frequently are we bringing it back in, all the things you kind of intimated in your question. These are things that we take into consideration on a bio-individual, like you as a unique person basis. So these are some things to think about. One is if someone has celiac disease, like known celiac markers, that's going to be a no, right? You could make the argument that maybe some ancient grain that's fermented possibly could bring it back in and you wouldn't notice symptoms. But to me, it's kind of like a physiological Russian roulette with your immune system that I really wouldn't want to sort of prime and irritate something that we've done such a great job with you, the patient, to improve that intestinal lining integrity, improve that immune system integrity, lower that inflammation. This person's come so far that this isn't really, like, I don't see anybody on that side of healing ever really miss gluten because there's so many better for them options where it's not something that they even want to entertain. Now, that's a smaller subset of people, someone that have known celiac disease, or let's just say celiac markers that aren't maybe conventionally diagnosed with celiac, but definitely have more overt autoimmune components when it comes to gluten. And let's just say severe food reactivities with gluten. But then there's that larger gluten sensitivity spectrum that many people find themselves on. Those people, I feel like it's on the table. So my goal is to we want to improve that gut lining integrity, improve their digestion and absorption, and get some immune tolerance. Because oftentimes the immune system's overreacting to lots of foods, and gluten's sort of the gateway food that's the bigger irritant. But is it the gluten or is it what we've done to the wheat supply?
Right.
And I think having a conversation about the hybridization of wheat, the spraying of herbicides and pesticides on wheat, and the proper preparation of wheat, right? What type of, is it soaked and sprouted? Is it fermented or is it refined? So there's a larger gradient of these conversations of it's not all or good or bad. It's down to, well, what type of wheat are we talking about? And what type of person and case are we talking about? And then where are they at on their healing journey? That we're talking about. So these things can last, and I've written about this copiously on drvolcol.com. I've written about it in my books, but it can take anywhere between, you could see decreased antibodies in weeks and months for somebody that is dealing, that's maybe in the middle ground of that gluten sensitivity spectrum, all the way to the more extreme autoimmune cases, which celiac's part of that, but then I would include other autoimmune issues that, like Hashimoto's disease, MS can have reactions to this, ulcerative colitis, Crohn can have reaction to this, rheumatoid arthritis can have reactions to this. Those people can take a year to 2 years before we're even talking about reintroduction. And we'd start with that. I would say gluten-free grains would be something that would be brought back first. Then we'd go into ancient grains that are fermented, things like sourdough bread with ancient grains that has gluten, but the fermentation breaks down the glutens and other lectins. And so all of the quality of the wheat and the preparation of the wheat really are things that we take into consideration. So I think that's the beautiful science and art of what we do. And that's why we call the pod Art of Being Well, because these are the things we take into considerations. But I want to know, we have some more hardliners on the panel here today. We have some more zealots.
It's fair.
Is definitely fair.
It's a fair statement. I'm a
I'm
little
the
more
good-
militant.
I'm the good cop. They're the grain bad cop.
Andrea used to be bad cop, and sometimes she still is. But I feel like you've been going over to the dark side, which is not.
Some would say the light side. But when
You're
on the
leaving
dark,
me on the
But when
island.
you're on the dark side, the light side does seem dark. It's all
Anyway,
relative.
So this is where I probably am on the island with you. I'm a little more militant than Will. And it's just mainly because why? If you have all of those things you just named and it can take we know the gut takes upwards of 18 to 24 months to truly heal. And that's under the most optimal of circumstances. Why? What is the point of it when we know there can be health implications of it? There are so many other better for you options. Why go down that? Why go down that
But who
rabbit
are you
hole?
talking about, though?
Like the autoimmune spectrum,
But
the leaky
what if you're
gut.
saying not, though? What if you're saying if someone's not autoimmune? They have gluten issues.
But
They have
why do they have
non-celiac gluten sensitivity. They have no. I'm just giving you scenarios.
Yes,
People are
it's
gonna.
fine.
This is the type of hashing out that we have for
yeah.
building
Oh,
telehealth
yeah.
patient protocols.
Yes.
So this is the type of customization, the level of customization people get. So someone has gluten antibodies. No other autoimmune markers, right? But they have they know in their body intuitively they're having gluten reactions, but
Yes.
they're not diagnosed with autoimmune. They don't have a family history of autoimmune.
No.
What's on the table for just Andrea as a clinician?
It's a long process.
Yeah, okay, but let's just say we've gone through that process.
I can't even think of a patient that had gluten sensitivity
Yeah.
and didn't have all those other things you just listed. So
I
I
don't
that's-
think
no,
I don't.
there are people out
I don't
there.
Yeah, I
think
know.
refined gluten products would ever be something I would tell
I'm not going
anyone
to tell
to
you
go
to go
back
get
to.
Wonder Bread. I'm not sorry,
Well,
Wonder Bread, if you're listening.
No,
And I'm not saying that you are.
either.
I'm not saying you are. I'm just.
let's make that very clear.
But let's be real, though. A lot of times, that's what we're
That's
kind of
what,
being
that's
asked.
what they're asking for. They're
So,
not
like,
talking.
if
People
you're
are asking
telling-
about Wonder Bread.
I'm not talking about
They're
Wonder
acting-
Bread.
What
they're
who are
acting-
you seeing during the day?
They're asking
These
about
are-
Dunkin' Donuts donuts.
But this is things.
They're asking
yeah,
about.
so-
These are
okay.
things that
Yeah.
people are used to, right? And so
Yes.
I do think, especially when you're talking about resiliency,
Yes.
that's the goal, right? Is to be able to adapt better. And I'm sorry, I just don't know with the way that food has gotten today, which we talk about a lot. I don't know that I would ever tell people to go back, because for me, a lot of times, honestly, this is such an eye-opening journey that we walk through with people that, sure, and you're not having a perfect diet. That's not what we talk about. We're very anti-diet culture here. But
Yes.
at the same time, you're learning and you're unlearning. And when you have something, maybe you do splurge on something and you see your reaction to that. Like, it's a learning lesson. And it's something that I tell people, I'm like, now you see it and you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and you can't unknow this information. And so I do think, I'm a fan of some sourdough, like properly fermented ancient grain sourdough. Absolutely. But I just wonder, I do think the population that actually can still handle that is getting like smaller and smaller.
But yeah, I would say that overall, to be clear, it's not the food's fault. It's what we've done to the food.
Exactly.
100%. We're not talking about people in ancient Greece who were having flatbread with their meals. We're talking about people today where there's a high amount of pesticides, herbicides. People are not properly preparing these. They're overly refined.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right, Will. If you get to the point
Right.
where you're saying, if this person is non-responsive, they're in good health, they're really taking care of themselves, and they want to have some sourdough bread that they...
And can I say this? Sorry for interrupting.
No, you're
Finish
fine.
that thought.
No, I was just gonna say, if that's where they're going with it, then yeah. But that's not what most. This question is gearing like how much, how little.
Well, see, what
this
I
is someone
hear is
that
that what I hear
recognizes
from
that they shouldn't have it.
Well, this is the point. Look, we'd have to talk to this person a little bit more to get to the heart of the matter. But I would say what I'm hearing from this 30-word question is that she really wants to do the right thing, and it brings her joy. So, and if there's some food that brings people joy, and the headspace and heart space in which you eat the food, when we've done our job on a physiological level, there are better for you options that are like we said, a sourdough, ancient grain, that could be fine for that person. I just want to see how much resilience can we bring back in, and there's a lot of gluten-free junk food. And just
Yes.
because
Oh
it's
my gosh.
gluten-free
Doesn't mean
make
it's
it
healthy.
healthy.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather have someone have an artisanal, organic, sourdough bread with wheat versus some gluten-free junk food.
I agree.
So
100%.
I'm just saying the context matters. That's all I'm saying. And I will say too, when you deal with things like mold toxins, environmental toxins, unresolved trauma, chronic stress, is it the food or is it all these other factors?
Yep.
So when you've dealt with the environmental toxin factor, you've dealt with the chronic stress factor, and allow the gut-brain axis, allow the vagus nerve, allow the nervous system and the immune system to calm down, then maybe that focaccia isn't going to be the end of the world.
The last thing I will say before we move on is that time absolutely matters here. And I do think if you're giving it the proper time to heal the body, you're right, we can get there. But a lot of times it's going to take time.
Yeah.
And some people heal and can get to that point within a year. Sure. Some people, like you mentioned though, Dr. Cole, it is going to take 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's 1 to 2 years exactly. I'm just saying that
the question
oftentimes we are not willing to give our body the proper time to.
Yeah,
and that's what
true.
I think is so
Patience,
important.
stillness, resting in the present moment, having non-resistance to the process, having a peace that passes understanding. That's the larger mind and heart set that are important through this process. But once you get that right and really have an inner, you have radical acceptance, I think, to the process. Because if somebody's like resisting the entire process and they're in this sort of that dieting consciousness of like, I hate this, I'm gritting my teeth, I really want that freaking donut. But that inner resistance and sort of frenetic energy is going to really slow down the process.
100%.
So that's why bringing in things like breath work and meditation and grounding practices, some of the things we're talking about here are really important processes when it comes to food.
Right.
And you may not make the connection between certain food reintroduction and these head and heart practices, but they really are intimately connected.
Yeah. I'm not fully disagree. I'm in between. I think that having done this for 15 years and seeing patients every day and just knowing their emotional struggles with it, to me, it typically is not, we're not talking up to most people on an everyday that are at that healing point yet.
Yeah.
And so I think for me,
well, you are also one that's talking about making sourdough gluten-free bread this morning. Like
I said gluten-free fermented sourdough.
And you're in the middle of a journey of giving it time for healing. So
100%. So this is not something that I'm like.
She's talking to herself right now.
yeah. She's going to go back and re-listen to this, guys.
She's like, Andrea, she submitted that question.
Yeah.
It was actually her the entire time. She's answering her own question.
Wow.
Which was pretty harsh.
This is a realistic. Yeah, right. Well, you're tough on yourself.
But anyways,
right. We
next
should move
question.
on. All right. I love this question. So this person bought intuitive fasting, started the program. I feel amazing and I'm loving recipes. However, with keto diets becoming so popular, I've noticed a ton of different bars and snacks at the grocery store that are keto friendly with very few net carbs, but packed full of sugar alcohols. So I love supplementing my diet with these as a treat from time to time, but they almost seem too good to be true. Can sugar alcohols affect ketosis or the fasting plan in general, or are they bad for us in some other way, Dr. Cole?
Okay, so this is the granular nitty gritty. So I am not a huge fan of regular consumption of sugar alcohols, which we've talked about on the pod before. Xylitol, erythritol, not really a lot of compelling data to have them on a consistent basis, especially when there's so many other better for you low-carb natural sweeteners, I would say, like allulose or stevia or monk fruit. These are better for you options. So the quality of the natural low-carb sweetener matters here.
Yep.
The sourcing of it, I should say, and what is being used in that ingredient list. Once in a while, not a big deal. for most people, right? I don't want to
Yeah.
over dramatize it and be hyperbolic and just be a zealot when it comes to avoiding every little minute variable. For the average person, randomly, not a big deal. On a consistent basis, if it's a grab and go option, I would look for things that are sweetened with those low carb sweeteners that I mentioned, or if you're not low carb, then to something like honey or
Right. Maple
syrup or something like that.
Yeah.
So intuitive fasting, for people that don't know, it's a book that I wrote. It's my third book, 3 of 4 books that I wrote. And there's a protocol in it. So she's doing the 4-week flexible fasting plan in the book. And the whole premise of that book is to build metabolic flexibility and mitochondrial health, supporting longevity and brain health and all that, healthy metabolism. So the goal in that book, and I want, as the person's asking this question, I want people to know, I want that person to know and everybody else, the goal isn't to always be in ketosis. So I don't want them to be, we do leverage the benefits of fasting with
Right.
a lower carb food, but then we talk about clean carb cycling, not
Yes.
fearing carbs, fiber-rich whole food carbohydrates. So she might be in certain weeks where we are pulsing lower carb and ketogenic states to tap into
Right.
these autophagy, longevity, sirtuin enhancing, senescent cell recycling pathways. But I don't want people to get caught up into being hyper focused on macros.
Yeah.
I think the quality of the food matters over the macros
Yep.
for most people. And I'd much rather them have whole food, fiber-rich carbohydrates than depend on all these, sugar alcohols, right? In the name of ketosis. And there's a cleaner way to go keto if that's a clinical objective for you, and that is a tool that we do utilize for telehealth patients when they need it. But for most people, it is a cyclical or temporary tool within the toolbox for different anti-inflammatory benefits, brain boosting benefits, metabolic benefits. But it's not sort of this utopia that I want people to stay in forever, and then they're going for anything as long as it's hashtag keto. It's not really the goal here. So hopefully that answers your question. I think it does.
Yeah, I think it does. I agree. Food freedom, food flexibility, carbs are not the enemy, but cycling and utilizing them appropriate. I also think having those little treats, and she even said it, once in a while. I mean, this does not sound like someone who's relying for it on a snack after every meal, trying to get that sugar high without getting the sugar high.
Yeah. Did you ask this question too? You're like, she does this. She definitely doesn't do that.
Definitely.
She definitely loves Harry Potter.
I mean, I would totally go for a keto bar right now, but it's okay.
Yeah. Hey, we've been there.
We've all
Been there.
All right. Well, final question, Dr. Cole. And I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, but this person's basically saying they're seeing cancer is more prevalent than ever before, seemingly in perfectly healthy younger people. And they said, feel like I'm hearing more and more diagnosed. To them, the perception is younger and healthy people in some ways, I've even seen this in my own life. Their perception of healthy might be more visual than what's actually happening internally. But my husband and I, you guys know Alan, we've had in the last 2 or 3 years have had at least 3 to 4 people that we know that were anywhere between 30 to 45 that have passed away from cancer. So it is something that I hear what this woman is saying, but I think this is a much deeper question than I think she even realizes. So I think even with the prevalence of what you just, the speech that you just gave at the Kellogg's event, I think that this kind of ties everything into a much larger conversation. So what are your thoughts about that? Feeling like the cancer diagnosis rate and death is hitting people younger and younger.
It is. It really is. It's like you said, like all the friends that you have, and I have similar, you have similar, like people that are in our friend group in their 30s and early, like really most of the 30s, are having these cancers that were later on in life and rare. And now we're happening more and more. I mean, the amount of people that we've seen with pancreatic cancer alone in our like friend group it is staggering. and it's happening younger and younger. I think we're hitting a point in human history where it's always happened throughout history. If you even look at, ancient times, they didn't have the language for it, but
they recorded it. Like black heart, black liver.
Historians would go back and say, well, they probably died of cancer. It was always there, but it's just unavoidably obvious that it is more pervasive and it's happening younger and younger.
Yeah.
Well, it's a combination of factors. We're living in this sort of toxic soup that is unsustainable for humanity. And it's not just one thing. It is the environmental toxins like PFAS or forever chemicals.
Right.
It is things like microplastics. It's things like herbicides and pesticides. It is things like EMFs. And it's obviously the impact that it's having on our environment and our soil. All of these ingredients on our soil and in our water. So we have to do whatever our goal on this podcast is to provide a measured, middle ground, sustainable, like joy-filled, grace-filled approach to living in this world that can be very polarizing in many levels. So I don't want people to feel like they need to live in some sort of BPA-free plastic bubble, but they have to live life, and the body's amazingly resilient. But we can't be stressing about this stuff, because stressing about it's not good for our health either. So we need to have an inner peace, I think, around this, and practice these acts of stillness. It's so important. But the reality is, it is an issue, and it's something that we mentioned going to Kellogg's recently. Me and some friends of mine in the space, and over 1,000 people showed up in Battle Creek, Michigan, which we talked about on the previous Ask Me Anything sort of Ask episodes. Go back and listen to that. But yeah, it's artificial dyes are still in American food.
Right.
And they come with a warning label in other countries.
Yes.
So we're hitting a lot of momentum here with this movement of saying, well, we're going to vote with our wallet. We're not going to be buying the foods. And like most of us here, most of the people that listen on the podcast, they don't eat the foods that have these artificial dyes. But many people in America don't know better.
Yeah.
So we need that do know better to be educating and empowering people in love and grace, not pointing our finger, not shaming them, because people are just doing the best they can for the most part. And they don't know because there's so much conflicting information. Yeah. So it is a combination of factors. A lab that we run for telehealth patients that I find to be very helpful for anybody that has maybe a family history of cancers, that wants to be proactive and not reactive, because most of the time, by the time somebody's diagnosed, it's been there for years.
Yes.
And it's big enough to be showing up on a scan. You're having symptoms, and it's not that to say it's too late, 'cause it's definitely not, but there's going to be more medical intervention then. Yeah. Maybe surgery, maybe chemo, maybe radiation. It's not pretty. Even if you catch things in stage 1, it's not always pretty. And it could be very traumatic. It is traumatic for people. But we have a blood test that we run for patients that has a very high sensitivity and specificity.
Yes. There's no known false positives.
No known false positives, and it measures circulating tumor cells, CTCs, which you guys can want to talk about that test.
Yeah, so it's a really cool test, because a lot of times when, cancer is being caught through a scan or an imaging, the tumor is already big enough, to see it on the image. So it's something that needs to be biopsy,
that's why mammograms
surgical.
Work
Exactly. However, what's really amazing about this test is it can catch cancer before you can even see it on an imaging scan. Because
hundreds of types of cancer.
Yeah, over 200 different types, I believe. And because say a tumor that's barely even seen on a scan.
Well, not even detectable on a scan.
Not detectable.
Less than a gram, I think, is what it.
Yeah. It emits over 3 million cancer cells a day. So this is
small, microscopic tumor.
Right. Cellular level tumor.
Can release millions of these CTCs.
Which that's what this test is scanning for and looking for. So even though it's coming back as a positive result, it still very well could be on a cellular level, meaning that your immune system has the ability to really eat it up if you do a specific type of protocol for it. So you're catching this possibly in the earliest stage possible. So it's a
and with
really
time, I have no doubt that these labs that we run in functional medicine are being more common, because they are so reputable and so science backed.
Yes.
And so if you're interested in this test, and I would say things that drive cancer, like environmental toxins,
Right.
then go to drwillcole.com, go to the Become a Patient page, and set up a telehealth consult, and we can get you these labs. Because they're labs we run for everybody around the world. We want to look at what causes cancer, like environmental toxins and foods, and then what are we at the stage where we are having this, we're catching things early so we can be proactive and bring amazing anti-cancer supportive protocols so you don't ever have to go down that road. So that's sort of I guess how I should say this is that this is the duality of the time that we live in. While we're having such sobering statistics of the rising levels of chronic diseases, not just cancer, but autoimmune conditions, metabolic problems, mental health issues, and cancers. But the other side of the coin is that we can catch things and be so much more proactive. There's so much more innovation in our space from a diagnostic and protocol standpoint.
Knowledge is power. I mean, that's what I think about constantly. You know, obviously you guys know that I lost my brother very young to cancer. And my mom and I have these conversations, and without shame or without regret, right? Because we do the best that we can, right? But at the same time, it's like looking back, if I would have had this knowledge, this understanding about food, about these environmental toxins, like think about what we can do and how much we really do have the power to change our environment, to change what we can control, because we can't control everything. We can't take away all the stressors. We can't take away all of the toxins. We can't live our life in a bubble. And I wouldn't want that for anyone.
And it would probably be a toxic bubble anyways, because it's made out of plastic.
And so it's exactly. And fear, right? That's not the goal behind it. But I think now, just knowing what I can do for my kids, for my family, for myself, it is powerful. It's empowering, knowing that, hey, I'm not going to be able to control everything, and I'm not going to live life with fear, but I can do things differently. I can, and really take these things into my hands, which I love, even just with that empowering movement towards Kellogg's is so needed. We can do that. We can do that for ourselves and for others around us.
And I think what's important is that there are people out there who don't know this. And so that's why the people who are standing up against Kellogg's it is important, because this is why the cancer rate is getting higher and higher, because there's a population of people who trust implicitly that if this is being told to me that this is food and I can ingest it, then it must be healthy.
Yeah, or at least innocuous.
Yes,
because most people don't know that what I would assume Fruit Loops are healthy, but they're like, it's all right though.
Yeah, it's not killing me.
It's just a little bit. It's not a big deal. It's just breakfast. It's not a big deal. Yeah, that's typically the take on it. But it's unsustainable, and it's not just one thing, right? And people are like, well, because we were talking about artificial dyes. And I see in the comments on these videos that, I'm tagged in from the rally, and they're like, well, why, what else? Like, why are you just focusing on dyes? Well, we have to start somewhere.
Yes.
And it's not just the dyes, but we have to start somewhere. And it's the one that's the most obvious when you look at other countries that are regulating this and have warning labels. Let's start there.
Yeah. And then we'll go towards the glyphosate. Because the World Health Organization came out years ago and said, this is a known carcinogen. Yeah. It causes cancer, but we're spraying everything.
Forever chemicals.
Yes.
These are things that we need to start inching towards having better standards for ourselves.
Right. Yeah, and I love what you keep saying is vote with your wallet. Make and not just politically vote, but with the companies. Make your opinion be known by where you put your money and what you invest in. And so for me, I think if we're seeing an increased risk of cancer, it's not just a one thing. I think it's a multitude of stuff, and it's preventable, and you can help a lot of people, especially if you're catching it early. And this is why what we do is so important, and why I'm so passionate about it. Because at the end of the day, we give people the opportunity to take ownership. This isn't like a college course that you take on writing and you may or may not use it in your next job. This is an education that can carry you and your family a lifetime. And if you can't see that, then you're blind, because then you're walking into everything just, like you said, just blindly trusting that even if it's not killing me, it's probably not hurting me. But you should know and you should understand.
Yeah. People will say callously, everyone's gonna die. I might as well go having something I love. That's a very
or I've been fine this long, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but what about your kids? What about your kids? Take you out of it.
Or what about your family? If you don't have kids, what about your family? What about your friends?
Right.
Yeah. What about the people that love you and need
that person
you?
typically has this low self-worth.
Yes.
Right? Or it's such they're numb to the reality.
But then that gets into the mental and emotional component of it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why are you like this? What is inhibiting you from realizing you're worth more than your Twinkie?
Yeah.
Like you're worth more than it.
And avoiding something that doesn't love you back isn't restrictive. It's self-respect.
Yeah.
And loving your body enough to eat something and nourish yourself with something that loves you back, it's the ultimate form of self-respect. So this is a larger mindset and heart set for many people, is that they have such low, I use the analogy with some telehealth patients. It's like if you have this old jalopy car, right? It's beat up, it's dented, it's like a 1989 Dodge Shadow.
Are you calling that old? Because I'm pretty sure I'm older than that. But okay.
Well, you're not a car.
Well,
Okay.
he said it. Not me.
How are you going to park it? How
Old
are you going to
jalopy.
fuel it? How are you going to service it? How are you going to take care of it on a daily basis? You're not going to care if someone slams the door into it because you're like, it's been around the block. But if you're like a high-end, nice car, you're going to fuel it with the best fuel. You're going to park it in maybe at the end of the parking lot to have healthy boundaries with those cars
You're
around
gonna get it
it.
washed.
Are you describing my husband in his truck? Because that kind of sounds like him right now.
You're going to get it washed weekly.
You're gonna get it washed
Or
weekly.
daily.
I mean, the analogy goes on and on and on. How do you see yourself?
That's so good.
And from that will bring about activities that are self-respect. Have healthy boundaries with yourself.
And if you don't care about yourself, I promise you we do. And we'll help you understand and help you see your self-worth. And
good.
that's why, even if it's just through this podcast, like you are worthy. If you are listening to this, you are worthy.
Yeah.
You're worthy of making good choices that love you back. And you don't have to be the 1 in 3 women that are going to be diagnosed with breast cancer. You don't have to be the people that we're talking about. There is an opportunity for healing.
Yeah. All right, guys. If you want to learn more about what we do, all of it's at drwillcole.com. We'll see you next time.